You've arrived at the quiet part of the day, the time when the mind softens, the world quiets, and stories from long ago can drift through gently. Tonight we step into the straw-scented shadows of a royal stable, where a boy not much older than 13 rose before the sun, and slept long after the candles of the palace had gone out. This is not the tale of kings or courtly intrigue. No powdered wig, no velvet robe, no echoing hall of mirrors. Instead, this is the story of a boy who swept mud from boots that weren't his, whispered to horses in the dark, and learned to obey before he could read. As we walk slowly through the corridors of the past, imagine yourself beside him, pitchfork in hand, boots caked in manure, and a sky still black with stars. There is dignity in silence. There is rhythm in labor. And there is something beautifully boring in a life bound by hooves and hay. If this kind of story helps you rest, feel free to like the video and subscribe. And tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it for you right now? It's strangely comforting to know who else is out there, drifting off to the same old history. Now breathe in slowly, and let the straw and leather quiet of 17th century France settle around you. It begins before the palace wakes, before a chambermaid draws open the first curtain, before the scullery clangs, before even the bells begin to ring across the vast marble courtyards. Somewhere behind the gold-trimmed facade of Versailles, behind the formal gardens and reflecting pools, a wooden door creaks open in the dim blue dark. The stable boy is already up. He doesn't have a room. He sleeps above the stables in a narrow loft that smells of horses and old oats, sharing space with mice and the slow breath of warm animals below. His blanket is coarse, his limbs are sore from the day before. But there's no complaint, there's no pause. There is only work. The first task is always the same: muck the stalls. One by one he lifts the straw, soaked through with the night's waste. The ammonia stings his nose, but he's used to it. The stable floor is uneven, and the pitchfork's wooden handle has a split that bites into his palm. There's no light, only the faint glimmer from a lantern hung on a nail. The horses snort softly, they know him. He's not important, not in the way a groom or farrier is, but they know the sound of his step. They shuffle back to give him room. Some are enormous, glossy creatures bred for parade and ceremony, more finely fed than most servants. By mid-morning he'll have scraped hooves, carried water, raked straw, and scrubbed leather harnesses until his arms ache. All of it must be spotless. These aren't just animals, they're reflections of the king himself. One smudge on a stirrup could cost a man his job, the boy knows this. He watches the grooms polish brass buckles with vinegar and cloth, mouths tight, eyes lowered. When the noblemen arrive to ride, they won't look at him. Not really. They'll whistle, gesture, maybe toss a command in a clipped voice. You saddle. Now he doesn't answer. He nods quietly and does what's needed. He's not allowed to touch the most prized stallions, not yet. Those are for the older men, the ones who've earned their trust. For now, he leads the gentler horses to the posts, brushes their coats, checks their shoes for loose nails. It's a kind of quiet dance, moving around a creature 10 times his strength, always alert, always gentle. There's no time to dawdle, no time to wonder, only routine and hunger. Meals are taken standing, if at all. A heel of bread, a cup of thin broth. Sometimes, if he's lucky, a hard cheese or a scrap of meat left from a groom's pocket. The cook in the servant's kitchen doesn't prepare food for the stable hands. They eat what's available when it's available. By afternoon, the palace is alive. Perfumed wigs and polished shoes parade across the marble floors. But down here near the stables, it is always the same. Hay dust in the air, low voices and the creak of wooden wheels as carts are repaired in the shade. The boy doesn't speak much. No one expects him to. But he listens, he learns. He watches how the grooms handle horses that spook. He notices which leather oils leave the cleanest shine. He learns where the shadows fall in the late afternoon, when there's a moment to rest. When night comes, the stables go quiet again. Lamps are lit, ropes checked, doors secured. The boy climbs the ladder to his loft. His hands are raw, his back is sore. But the rhythm of the day wraps around him like a blanket. There's comfort in knowing what comes next. It is a life of service, of silence, of unseen skill and unspoken pride, and it is beautifully, exhaustingly boring. Beneath the king's balcony, beneath the thunder of hooves in the parade yard, there is a man no nobleman speaks to unless they must. His coat is plain, but his boots are spotless. He carries no title, but the entire stable listens when he clears his throat. He is the head groom, and to the stable boy he is both warning and guide. The head groom doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. A glance is enough to stop a joke mid-sentence or correct a slack harness. He knows the name of every horse. He remembers the gait of one from 6 winters past and can tell if a shoe is half loose by the sound of hooves on packed dirt. His knowledge is quiet and precise, like a knife sharpened slowly over decades. He began just like the boy did, sweeping hay, dodging kicks, waking before the sun. But where others grew tired or careless, he remembered. He practiced. And when others were caught sleeping or drinking from the wine buckets, he stayed clean and silent. Over the years, one by one, the others moved on or failed or fell out of favor. He did not. He keeps a small notebook wrapped in oiled cloth. Inside are records of feed ratios, shoeing schedules, ailments, temperaments. No one but him ever sees it. He does not speak unless spoken to. When a nobleman's mount arrives in a lathered fury, he is the one who calms it. When a hoof splits or a bridle snaps, he fixes it with a sigh and a twist of the wrist. To the palace, he's invisible. But to the stable boys, he is a figure of deep, silent respect. Not feared, not exactly, but watched. His standards are high, but his punishments are quiet. A careless boy might find himself transferred to mucking pigsties for a month. A talkative one might simply be ignored. Sometimes, if a boy does something especially well, oils a saddle perfectly, soothes a nervous filly, the head groom might give a nod. Just once, it means more than gold. He teaches without speaking. He trains by example. If he adjusts a harness a certain way, the others copy him. If he ties a knot they don't recognize, they go find out what it's called. If he looks disappointed, it can spoil a boy's whole day. In the evenings, after the horses are bedded and the doors are latched, he walks the rows slowly, one hand on each stall door. He checks locks, he listens for breathing. He runs a hand down a horse's flank without saying a word. He knows the signs of fever, fear, hunger, and even before the animal does. Sometimes the boy watches him from the loft above, eyes just peeking over the edge of the hay. He studies how the man moves. The way he never flinches when a horse shifts, the way his boots never squeak, the way the animals lower their heads when he passes. It is not magic, it is years. There are rumors that he once saved a duchess's life when her horse bolted, that he trained the king's favorite stallion from birth, that he was offered a position in the royal court and turned it down. Whether any of it is true doesn't matter. In the stables, his word is final. He is not noble, but in this small world of dust, hooves, and hay, he is something better, respected. The boy knows this path may be open to him in time, if he's patient, if he listens. If he learns to hold his tongue and his temper. The stable doesn't reward ambition loudly. It rewards consistency, and so he sweeps more carefully, brushes a little longer, notices which knots hold best in rein, because someday perhaps he'll be the one they look to when a horse refuses its bit, or when the silence in the stalls grows too loud. In the stables of Versailles, power doesn't wear a crown. It carries a currycomb and speaks in nods. To the court above, a horse arrives polished and perfect, tail braided, coat shining, breath calm. But beneath the hayloft, in the wooden racks and shadowed corners, lies a quieter world. The tools, tricks, and quiet rituals that make the illusion of ease possible. Every item has its place. The currycombs, flat, round metal tools with teeth, remove sweat and dust in slow circular motions. They clink gently against wooden stalls in the early hours. A kind of quiet music known only to those who rise before the sun. The stable boy learns to choose the right brush for each coat. Stiff for thick hides, soft for sensitive flanks. There's oil for leather and oil for hooves. He watches how the grooms dip cloth into vinegar to cut through grime. How they rub tack with beeswax until it gleams. Buckets, ropes, worn rags, and nothing is wasted. Even the broken tools are repurposed. A splintered handle becomes a wedge. A frayed rope might be tied around a pail to keep it from splitting in cold. The stable is a world of reuse, of adaptation. Efficiency is not just valued, it's necessary. There is a kind of alchemy in the smells. Horse sweat, dried hay, iron, and damp wood. None are pleasant on their own, but together, they create a sense of place, a kind of earthy order. The boy begins to associate certain scents with moods. Vinegar and saddle soap mean preparation. Coal smoke and wet leather mean someone is in trouble. In the back corner, past the stalls and near the open-air washing trough, are the sharpening stones. Bits of steel lean beside them, worn rasps, hoof knives, curved blades for trimming and shoeing. The boy isn't allowed to touch them yet. Only the farrier uses those, but he watches how the man rolls the hoof between his legs, taps the shoe, listens for a ring that tells him it's solid. Some tools aren't physical. There are tricks passed down in low voices, a slice of apple hidden in a saddlebag for a skittish horse, a whispered phrase, nonsense, really, used to calm an animal that's about to bolt, tricks for loosening a leather strap that's frozen stiff in the winter, tricks for remembering which stallion bites. The stable is full of these unspoken systems, lines scratched on the wall to mark feeding times. A bent nail used to identify which harness belongs to which horse. The boy begins to understand that everything has a rhythm, and breaking it, even slightly, brings chaos. When it rains, the floor becomes slippery. They spread straw in patterns designed not just to absorb water, but to direct flow. It's quiet engineering, unsung geometry. The head groom notices these things. And then there are the bells. Small brass bells fixed to certain doors, not for decoration, not for sound, but for warning. A certain horse dislikes strangers. Another cannot be approached from the left. The bells are kind of mute language. Those who know listen. Those who don't last long. Sometimes before sleep, the boy lies awake and pictures where each item belongs. He organizes the tools in his mind. He imagines cleaning them, polishing them, knowing them better. Not because anyone has asked, but because it brings peace. To an outsider, the stable may look chaotic, dust, dung, noise. But to the boy, it is a quiet system. A place of logic, precision, and memory. A place where everything has a reason, even if it isn't written down. This is not a world of books. It's a world of repetition, of knowing by doing. And every tool, every knot, every soft word to a frightened colt is a kind of language all its own. The palace above may sparkle, but it is the stable that breathes with life. It doesn't happen every day, but when it does, the air changes. A boot clicks on the stable threshold. A polished heel, a velvet cuff. A court servant, not from below but from inside the palace, steps just far enough in to wrinkle their nose and announce that a carriage is to be drawn, or a horse is to be brought forward. The stables may be quiet, but the palace is not. Schedules shift, guests arrive. Plans change on a whisper, and when they do, the stable answers, fast but without a fuss. The boy has never seen the king, not directly, but he's seen the horses meant for him, tall, gleaming, almost ethereal. He's helped clean their bridles, watched as gold tassels were attached, as silken cloths were drawn tight and then carefully straightened. When the palace sends word, every movement tightens. The head groom doesn't raise his voice. He simply turns and everyone knows what to do. A specific stall is opened. A particular feed is brought. The air smells suddenly sharper. Leather polish, hair oil, and a subtle trace of clove from the spice mixture rubbed onto the royal horses to repel flies. The boy isn't tasked with harnessing these animals, not yet, but he observes closely, watches how the brass buckles must lie perfectly flat, how the mane must be combed in a single direction, how even the hooves are oiled so they shine as they step onto marble. There is no margin for error. The horses are reflections of Versailles itself. They must move like music, shine like mirrors. The boy has seen a groom dismissed for a wrinkle in a saddle blanket. The punishment is silent, swift, final. Sometimes it's not the king, but visiting nobility, duke's envoys. A duchess once requested a white mare only to change her mind 10 minutes later. The stable had both animals ready, standing by, tied in shade, their breath misting in winter air. Once, the boy followed a groom just far enough to watch the horses step into the palace courtyard. The sound of hooves on stone was soft but deliberate. Guards stood still as statues. Curtains moved on the upper floors, someone watching, someone judging. The horse steps were timed, paced, not too fast, not too slow. And when the carriage rolled forward, painted wood, shining wheels, crested emblems, it was as if the entire scene were choreographed. Then the grooms returned, expressionless. Horses were unharnessed. The head groom made no comment, but the boy noticed a nod, subtle. Approval, perhaps. Later, in the quiet, he helped remove the tassels, folded the silks, cleaned the buckles, returned everything to its precise place. These moments, brief and intense, were the bridge between the stables and the palace. A reminder that though the boy lived in dust and dung, his work reached marble halls. It passed beneath chandeliers, it was noticed, even if no one ever said so aloud. The palace never thanked the stable. It never had to. But when it called, the stable always answered. And for a boy with hay in his boots and straw in his hair, that was enough. The silent knowledge that the quiet labor of his world touched the edge of power, even if only for a moment. There are breaks in the rhythm, not long and never guaranteed, but they come like soft hoofbeats in deep straw, brief, quiet, and almost invisible unless you know where to look. The stable boy does not have hours to spare. He does not sit for tea or wander gardens or rest his back against sun-warmed walls for long. But in the gaps between tasks, between the hauling, brushing, checking, and fetching, there are small moments of stillness. He learns to savor them. One comes after the morning feeding, when all the horses are chewing in unison. Heads bowed, tails swishing gently, the warm smell of oats in the air. For 10 or 15 minutes, the stable is full but quiet. The boy sits on an overturned bucket, elbows on knees, listening to the rhythm of chewing and breathing. It calms something inside him. Another comes in the late afternoon, when most of the nobles have returned from their rides and the worst of the day's pressure is past. The shadows are longer, the air cooler. Light filters through the stable windows in pale beams that dance with dust. He might lean on the stall door, watching a mare twitch her ears at the flies or feel the slow pulse of his own heartbeat in the stillness. Sometimes, when no one is looking, he hums nothing tuneful, just a soft note or two, shaped by breath, barely more than a whisper. Horses don't mind. Some even seem to draw closer, their ears tilting toward the sound. He speaks to them too, quietly. Not words of command, but simple phrases. Easy now, good girl. There you are. The tone matters more than the meaning. It builds a kind of trust. Not friendship exactly, but familiarity. They recognize him by voice, by scent, by motion. In these peaceful slivers of the day, he remembers small things. His mother's voice, the feel of spring grass, the sound of church bells in the village where he was born. He doesn't miss home often. This life has become his. But memory still finds him, especially in the hush of the stables. There's also the comfort of routine, the predictability of his tasks, the familiarity of the tools. He knows which boards creak when stepped on. He knows the order of the feeding. He knows the exact weight of a water bucket in his left hand. These repetitions become a kind of meditation, calming in their sameness. Even his fatigue becomes part of the rhythm. He is tired every day. His hands are always rough, his legs always sore. But these are constants, like the dawn or the chirp of crickets outside the barn. He rarely speaks to the other boys, but there's a shared language in glances and gestures. One boy leaves a piece of bread on the bucket sometimes. Another shows him how to twist a rope so it won't fray. Kindness is never announced. It's slipped quietly between tasks, unnoticed by anyone who doesn't know to look. And at night, just before he climbs the ladder to the hayloft, he sometimes stands outside the stable door. The air smells of damp earth and wood smoke. The stars, clearer here than in the city, press down with a cold stillness. The palace is lit behind him. Laughter and music carry faintly on the breeze. But here in the shadows, it's just him and the horses. The quiet is complete. And in that moment, however fleeting, he feels something close to peace. Not comfort, not luxury, but peace in knowing that he belongs, that his role, though low, is essential. A soft heartbeat beneath the glitter of Versailles. The stable boy doesn't attend school. He doesn't sit on wooden benches or copy Latin from a slate. His education is tactile, absorbed through his skin, his joints, his fingertips. His teachers are leather straps, cracked wood, and hooves that twitch when cleaned too fast. There is knowledge in this place, but it's not written. It's built layer by layer in calloused hands and aching muscles. And the first lesson is always this: the hands must know what the eyes don't. He learns the weight of water. Not just a bucketful, but the moment the handle will bite too deep into his palm. He learns the feel of sweat on a horse's neck, when it's too much, when it's not enough. The tools speak, if only through pressure and resistance. A bridle tells him when it's stiff with age. A saddle squeaks when it's been buckled too tight. Buckles click differently when they're aligned just right. The worn leather responds to care like a living thing, softened with oil, tensed with neglect. Even silence becomes a form of education. He listens to the way a horse shifts in its stall, the gentle creak of a beam above, a sudden pause in the rhythm of chewing. Every sound means something. Something's wrong. Something's about to go wrong. Or, most often, all is well. Mistakes are rare but never forgotten. A saddle tightened on the wrong notch. A bridle looped backward. A hoof missed in the cleaning. Each one earns a correction. Not shouted, just shown. Demonstrated once, then never spoken of again. And still, some things are never taught aloud. No one says that you must always greet a horse from the side. But the boy learns, the hard way, that approaching head-on can startle even the gentlest beast. No one explains why certain grooms wear gloves for some tasks and not others. He learns by watching him and by the blisters. The lessons are cumulative. Small daily understandings layered quietly over one another, like straw, like dust, until one day his hands reach for a rope or buckle or bit and do the right thing before his mind even speaks. It's in these movements that confidence grows. Not the loud confidence of courtiers or soldiers, but something quieter. Deeper, the confidence of belonging. He begins to anticipate the groom's needs, to fetch the right item before it's requested, to adjust a strap before it's noticed. His reward isn't praise, it's efficiency. It's trust, a subtle nod, a slightly longer pause before being dismissed. And still, the hands keep learning. He learns which oils soak faster, which knots slip when wet, how to wrap a wounded leg, not because someone showed him, but because he watched it done once, quietly in a stall, on a winter evening. The knowledge doesn't feel like learning. It feels like remembering something already known. And when he lies in the hay at night, muscles sore, fingers raw, he doesn't replay conversation. There were few of those. Instead, he feels the imprint of the day, the pull of a girth strap, the warmth of a velvet nose, the sting of vinegar in a small cut on his hand. In this world, the mind follows the body, and the boy learns not by being told, but by becoming. To the stable boy, each horse has a name, a temperament, a routine. But to the nobility, a horse is far more than an animal. It is status, taste, and power made visible. Muscle wrapped in silk, posture on four legs. The boy learns that how a horse behaves reflects how a man wants to be seen. There's the gray stallion that dances in place, nostrils flaring. It belongs to a young marquis known for his flair and impatience. Then there's the deep chestnut mare with steady hooves and elegant lines. She belongs to a widowed duchess who rides in silence, her gloved hands never trembling. The boy doesn't speak to these nobles. Often they don't even acknowledge him. But he sees them, hears them, learns their moods by the way they approach. A tight grip on the reins means tension. A loose hold means confidence. He studies the way they swing into the saddle, the way they pause before riding, the quick glances to see who's watching. He begins to understand. The choice of horse is as deliberate as the choice of wig or waistcoat. A nervous noble might request a tall horse for presence. An aging courtier might choose a calm gelding, easy to control. The stable is not just a place of function. It's a mirror for the hierarchy inside the palace. The boy sees which horses are favored and which are forgotten. He learns that the gelding in the far stall, rarely used, once belonged to a duke who fell from grace. The animal is healthy, obedient, but it smells faintly of lavender and memory, and no one asks for it anymore. He also sees the rivalries. Two noblemen request the same white mare within days of each other. The head groom handles it diplomatically, but the stable buzzes for a week afterward. The boy doesn't know the details. He only knows that sometimes a horse's scent carries secrets no saddlebag could hold. Occasionally, horses are gifted. An exotic breed from the Ottoman Empire. A strong-legged Spanish stallion. These arrivals cause a stir. The boy watches as the grooms murmur over their unfamiliar gaits, their unpredictable moods. Nobility comes to peer at them like children at a fair, and behind it all, the head groom tracks everything. He knows who prefers which feed, who insists on black leather instead of brown, which nobleman refuses to ride after rainfall. The boy begins to absorb this information too, not because he's told, but because he listens. He learns discretion. If a horse returns lathered and limping, he says nothing. If a noble dismounts red-faced and limping, he looks away. His world runs alongside theirs, close but never touching. Even in cleaning the tack, he senses rank. The king's stirrups are polished to a dull glow, not flashy, just perfect. The princess's reins are stitched with blue thread. The bishop's saddle smells faintly of incense. These details never appear in public, but they matter. Nobility is built on unseen gestures. Over time, the boy understands. The horses are not simply companions. They are messengers, not of words, but of position. They carry not just riders, but reputations. And each hoofprint left on the palace gravel is more than a sound. It's a statement. And so he brushes them more carefully, listens more closely, tightens each strap with quiet intention. Because even if the nobleman never knows his name, the horse does. And in this world, that's how respect begins. When the nobles glide through the palace gates on horseback, they appear effortless, clean, composed. Their boots gleam, their horses move like clockwork. But behind that ease, beneath the silks and smiles, lies a world of unseen preparation, one the stable boy knows intimately. No horse rides itself to perfection. The illusion begins hours before a rider ever appears. In the early morning, before the courtyard is even lit, the boy is already moving. Water is fetched, oats are measured, saddles inspected. Even the smallest detail, a stiff buckle, a loose girth, can unravel a ride if not caught in time. There is no glory in this work, only the comfort of readiness. He begins with the hooves, always the hooves. Stones wedge in overnight. Mud dries thick around the frogs. He picks each hoof gently but firmly, brushing out grit with practiced fingers. A single misstep could mean a thrown shoe or worse. Next comes grooming, not just for health but for shine. The curry comb draws circles across the horse's flank. Then the dandy brush flicks dust from the coat. A damp cloth for the face, a quick sweep of the tail to untangle it finger by finger. Each horse requires different pressure, different strokes. Some flinch, others lean in, grateful. There's a saddle to inspect, the leather stretched from use but still firm. He oils the straps, rubs wax into the stitching. He checks the bit for rust, runs his fingers along the reins for frays. These small acts become a ritual, repeated so often that his body moves without needing to think. Sometimes, if the rider is of high rank, additional touches are needed. A ribbon tied to the bridle, hooves blackened with soot to deepen their shine. The saddle blanket is straightened and brushed. No creases, no dust. And still there's more. The path to the palace must be walked. The boy checks for loose gravel, puddles, anything that could spook or dirty the mount. If it's rained, straw is laid down to soften the steps. If the air is cold, the horse is walked first, slowly in long circles, until the muscles warm and steam gently rises from its back. None of this is seen by the nobles. They arrive just before the ride, gloved hands extended. The horse is ready, ears alert, nostrils calm. The boy holds the reins lightly, eyes down. There is no conversation. Only a nod, a step back, and the moment the mount is taken. Sometimes, if the ride goes well, the nobleman returns with a relaxed face. The horse is patted. A quiet thank you may be offered, not to the boy, but to the head groom. Still he feels it. It lingers in the air like the scent of leather and pine oil. He never expects thanks, not really. His satisfaction lies in invisibility. If no one notices his work, that means it was done perfectly. And when the horse is returned, sweating and calm, he begins again. The tack is removed, the sweat marks brushed out, the hooves checked once more. The horse is walked until dry, then fed and left to rest. Only then, as the sun shifts westward, does the boy rest too, briefly, silently.
He may never ride these horses,
but he knows them better than those who do. And in each polished bit, in each carefully swept path, his presence remains. He is the reason the ride feels effortless, even if no one ever sees him. In the polished world of Versailles, the seasons change in paintings and tapestries, but in the stables they arrive in the form of mud, cracked hands, and frozen breath. The stable boy doesn't need a calendar. He knows the time of year by the texture of the hay, the weight of the wind, the sounds of hoofbeats against different ground. When it rains, the roof becomes a drum. Water runs down the sloped tiles, gathers in puddles just outside the doors. The dirt paths turn slick and dangerous. Horses grow restless, pacing their stalls, flicking their ears at every rumble. On those days, the boy works slower. Not because he wants to, but because everything takes longer. Buckets are heavier, boots grow thick with clay. Even the harnesses resist his fingers, damp with humidity and stubborn in the cold. Inside the stable, the air feels closer. The smell of wet straw and horse sweat hangs heavier. He uses more straw to soak the floors, more vinegar to fight the mildew that creeps in at the corners. In the winter, things become sharper. The air bites his nose, his fingers, his lungs. Water buckets freeze over. Metal tack burns the skin. He wears extra layers. Wool if he's lucky, though often it's just a second linen shirt damp from the day before. Breath clouds in front of him like smoke. The horses stamp more often, shaking frost from their manes. Their coats thicken, grooming becomes harder. Burrs cling to the longer hair. Ice gathers at their fetlocks. Sometimes, on the coldest mornings, the boy lights a small fire near the tool bench. Not for warmth. He doesn't stand still long enough to enjoy it, but to thaw the bits and stirrups before they touch the horses' mouths and flanks. Snow is quieter. It muffles the world, softens hoofbeats, but it adds weight. Shoveling the path becomes a daily task. Blankets are checked, changed, replaced. He watches for signs of chill, a drooping ear, a sluggish step, and responds before anyone has to ask. And then there is summer. At first it's a relief. The thaw, the longer light, the ease of dry ground. But heat brings its own demands, flies multiply. Horses sweat more, drink more, grow agitated under the sun. The boy learns tricks. Mint leaves hung in stalls, vinegar rubbed on legs, a slower pace to the grooming. The saddles must be cleaned more often, sweat marks brushed out before they stiffen into salt. Storms come quickly. The sky turns black without warning. He must be ready to rush out, gather loose tools, close shutters. Horses fear lightning. He stays close, soothing them, whispering nonsense just to keep them calm. There is no season without work, no weather without consequence. The palace guests speak of the gardens in bloom, of snow on the rooftops, of golden leaves falling like poetry. But the stable boy knows those same seasons in cracked nails, soaked boots, and aching arms. And yet, despite it all, there are moments, rare and perfect, when the sky glows soft with morning frost, or a breeze carries the scent of warm hay, or the sound of hooves echoes gently on dry stone. In those moments, the world feels balanced. Not easy, never easy, but right, as if the rhythm of his labor is in step with the turning of the earth. The palace does not sleep early. Behind its glowing windows, music carries, wine flows, conversations stretch into the night. But in the stables, the rhythm slows long before the final candle burns out. For the stable boy, evening doesn't arrive with a bell or a clock. It comes with quieter hoofbeats, slower breathing, the soft creak of wood settling into stillness. The last horse is walked. The last tack is hung. The last bucket is filled. He moves differently now, not from fatigue, though he is tired always, but because the pace no longer demands urgency. He can afford to move with care. He checks each stall one final time. Fingers trail along wooden planks. A loose hinge here, a flickering lantern there. He smooths the straw under one restless gelding, adjusts the blanket on an aging mare. These small acts have no witness, but they're important. The horses sleep better, and so does he. There is comfort in the routine, not excitement, but familiarity. The brush hung on its peg. The pitchfork leaned just so. The worn bench near the corner stall still holding the shape of his weight. He climbs the ladder to the hayloft without needing to see. His feet know every rung, every shift of balance. Up here it's warmer. The straw is dry and fragrant, the scent rising like bread from an oven. He has no blanket, just his coat rolled into a pillow. But it's enough. Above him the roof groans softly. A breeze rustles through the eaves. Somewhere below a horse snorts in its sleep. Another shifts, the faint jingle of a halter echoing up through the boards. He lies on his side, knees tucked, hands curled near his chest. His breath slows. Sometimes he thinks of other places. Fields, rivers, a mother's voice, but more often he thinks of nothing at all. Just the ache of his limbs. The weight of the day pressed gently into his bones. No one thanks him for this work. No applause, no recognition, but he knows. He knows that without the stable, without this quiet, constant care, the elegance of Versailles falters. He supports a world that rarely sees him. But here, beneath the rafters, with hay in his hair and dust in his throat, he is at peace. And though the palace glitters above and the stars burn above that, the boy falls asleep not with dreams of grandeur, but with the soft, steady breath of horses all around him. Each one a quiet guardian, each one a part of the rhythm that carries him from one day into the next. And in that rhythm, he rests. The stable boy rarely enters the palace itself. He doesn't walk on polished floors or dine beneath chandeliers, but from his place just beyond the marble steps he catches glimpses, reflections of a world that seems made from glass and gold. When he delivers a horse to the front gate, the courtyard is a theater. Servants bustle, nobles drift in conversation, powdered faces tilt toward the sun. Perfume and laughter float through the air like mist. He does not linger. He knows better than to let his eyes rest too long on brocade or jewels. But still, he watches. He sees the way the king's carriage gleams even in shadow, the way guards stand like statues, unmoving no matter the heat. He notices the carefully rehearsed gestures, a gloved hand extended for a letter, a slight bow offered and returned, each movement shaped by expectation. The boy listens too. Bits of conversation drift on the wind. Words like proclamation, favor, exile, inheritance. They mean little to him in detail, but the tone carries weight. He understands enough to know that power shifts here. Not with swords, but with whispers. Sometimes he delivers a message to the royal kennel, or assists with a traveling noble's retinue. On these errands he is quiet, invisible. He keeps his cap low, his responses short. But he soaks in every sight. He sees children in velvet chasing one another through the gallery gardens. He sees a footman trip and be dismissed with a flick of the wrist. He sees a court lady smile at a guard just once before looking quickly away. And always he returns to the stables, carrying these moments like secret stones in his pocket. He begins to understand the palace, not through its architecture or policies, but through its margins. Through the sigh of a tired maid, the glance of a nervous page, the silent fury of a nobleman waiting too long for his mount. The court seems weightless, but it isn't. It presses down on the workers, on the horses, on the very timbers of the stable roof. The boy feels that pressure like weather, always shifting, always present. Still, there are flashes of wonder. A violinist once practiced near the stables, the notes rising like smoke. A painter asked to sketch one of the king's prized horses, and the boy watched, barely breathing, as brush met canvas. Once he even glimpsed the king himself, distant and surrounded by attendants, moving as though the ground bent to meet his steps. These moments do not change his life. They don't soften the straw or lighten the buckets, but they expand it. Remind him that even within his small circle, the world is vast, complex, strange. And yet, when he returns to the quiet of the stalls, he does not envy the palace. Not really, the laughter there sounds rehearsed. The silks shimmer, but they rustle with rules. Here among the horses, the language is simpler, honest. He may sleep in hay, but he sleeps deeply. He may eat crusts, but he eats in peace. And every now and then, as he brushes down a mare or oils a bridle, he smiles to himself, knowing that while the nobles ride high, they still depend on hands like his. Hands that remain unseen but essential. Even in the quiet world of the stables, there is a ladder. Invisible but firm. The stable boy knows his place on it well, near the bottom. Not quite the lowest, but nowhere near the top. He is not the only one who works among the horses. There are older grooms, men with hands twice his size and backs bent from years of lifting. There are apprentices younger than him, who fumble with straps and spill oats more often than not. Each has a role, and each watches the others carefully, not with suspicion, but with understanding. In this space, respect is earned slowly, not with charm or wit, but with consistency. If you arrive before sunrise, work without complaint, and know how to wrap a sprained fetlock in silence, people begin to notice. Not with words, there is little talk, but with how they pass you the brush or how they don't double-check your knots. The boy watches the head groom with particular care. He's an older man, lean and weathered, with a voice that rarely rises above a murmur. Everyone listens to him, everyone defers. Not because he demands it, but because he knows more than anyone else, and he never needs to prove it. He remembers every name, both of horse and rider. He can spot a sore shoulder by the way a horse shifts weight. He can wrap a harness so quickly and cleanly that it seems to appear from the air. And yet he moves slowly, deliberately, as if every action matters. The boy doesn't speak to him often, but when he does, it's with caution. Yes, sir. No, sir. Short, respectful replies. And on rare occasions, when the head groom offers a brief nod of approval, or places a hand briefly on the boy's shoulder, it stays with him for days. There's a quiet camaraderie among the others, too. It isn't friendship in the usual sense. There's no time for play, no room for personal talk. But there's an unspoken trust. A stable hand will cover a missed chore, show you a better way to tie a slip knot, share a corner of bread if yours has gone stale. There are hierarchies, yes, but they are maintained with subtlety. A new apprentice is expected to sweep, to haul, to listen more than speak. But if they endure the first few months, shoulders hunched and eyes open, they are slowly brought in, taught how to calm a biting gelding, or when to check for lice under the saddle blanket. And always there is movement. The boy is no longer the newest. Others have come since with unsure fingers and wide eyes. He sees himself in them. Quietly he helps. He shows how to loosen a stuck buckle, how to approach a nervous horse without being kicked. Not for praise, just because someone once did the same for him. He begins to sense that time, not age, is what grants standing here. Each hour spent among the horses smooths his presence into the wood and straw. He becomes part of the rhythm, part of the memory of the place. He may never rise to be head groom. He may never wear the dark green coat that marks those in charge, but he is no longer invisible. His work speaks for him, his silence carries weight. And as he watches the apprentices struggle and the older men move with aching grace, he understands something simple and satisfying. In the stable, every rung of the ladder is built with sweat, and the climb, while quiet, is always upward. Occasionally, a noble family departs Versailles for a journey. A summer estate, a political errand, or a pilgrimage too important to ignore. And when the nobility travels, their horses, and those who care for them, must follow. For the stable boy, these departures are the most chaotic days of the year. The first signs appear in hushed conversations and increased foot traffic. A valet rushes across the courtyard. A carriage is aired out. Boxes appear in corners of the stables full of velvet saddles and polished bridles. Word spreads quietly. The Count is leaving. Or perhaps the Marquise. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows. Traveling with the nobility is not optional for the horses. They must be ready, fed, cleaned, shoed, and rested. Days before departure, the stable boy works late into the evening. He checks harnesses for wear. He rubs oil into every creaking buckle. Even the horse blankets are brushed clean of straw and laid out neatly, one per animal, as if presenting them to royalty themselves. Then come the carriages, large, heavy, and demanding. Their wheels must be checked, their fittings secured. The stable boy doesn't handle the carriages directly. That's a coachman's domain. But he helps hitch the teams. The horses must be arranged in perfect balance, strongest at the front, calmest in the rear. It takes an entire morning to assemble a single carriage team. On the day of travel, the courtyard swells with noise. Footmen carry trunks, maids call to one another. The horses, sensing the energy, grow restless. The stable boy moves among them with calm hands, smoothing manes, checking girths, whispering in low tones. Once the carriages roll out, he is not always left behind. Sometimes he rides along, not inside the carriage, of course, but behind or beside, on horseback or perched beside the grooms. The roads are long, uneven, and dusty. But he enjoys these journeys in his quiet way. The countryside changes. The air smells different, more pine, less perfume. Inns replace palaces, rivers appear. Fields stretch out like forgotten tapestries. At night he sleeps under the stars beside the horses, wrapped in his cloak, lulled by crickets and distant hoofbeats. The nobility, of course, stays indoors and warm and fed. But the boy finds comfort in the openness. No palace walls, no heavy doors, just sky and the steady rhythm of the road. He watches as noblemen lean from windows to inspect the countryside. He sees noblewomen reading letters by candlelight, barely noticing the creak of the carriage wheels. He wonders what they think of these journeys, whether they long for home or embrace the freedom. For the boy, it's work either way. He must ensure the horses eat, drink, and recover. He must adjust saddles rubbed raw from long hours. He must sweep the stalls at every temporary rest. But there is beauty, too. A moonrise over a distant village. The gleam of early dew on the mane of a dozing mare. And when the journey ends and the party returns to Versailles, the stable regains its old rhythm. Familiar creaks, familiar voices, familiar stone underfoot. But the boy brings something back with him, a broader horizon, perhaps. A new understanding of what lies beyond the palace walls. Or maybe just the quiet memory of a single night where the stars were clear and no commands were spoken. Travel doesn't change his place in the world, but it reminds him that there is a world. And in that vastness, even a stable boy carries more than saddles. He carries stories. To most, a horse is a creature of muscle and movement. But in the court of Louis XIV, it is something more. It is a mirror of prestige, a walking emblem of wealth, status, and personal refinement. The stable boy understands this even if no one says it aloud. He sees how a nobleman selects his mount with the same precision he might choose a waistcoat. How the color of the horse, the height of its gait, even the design on its bridle all speak a language few admit to hearing, but all instinctively understand. Some horses are chosen not for strength but for spectacle. A white Andalusian, shimmering like ivory in the sun. A black Frisian with feathered hooves and a neck that arches like pride itself. These are not simply animals, they are silent declarations. And the boy helps them shine. He polishes brass fittings until they catch the light just so. He rubs vinegar into the hooves to darken them. Brushes manes until they fall in soft, controlled waves. He even powders certain horses, dusting their coats with pale chalk to enhance their brightness. It takes time, patience, precision. But the result is a horse that enters a courtyard like a prince. He hears nobles speak of bloodlines, not only their own but their horses. Whispers of sires and dams, of Spanish imports and secret Hungarian strains. Horses have pedigrees just like their owners. And a good one, properly displayed, can lift a man's reputation faster than a well-placed word at court. Sometimes a nobleman requests a particular look. A plumed saddle, matching reins, even colored ribbons woven into the tail. The boy never questions, he makes it happen. And yet, beneath all the ceremony, the horses remain horses. They nudge him for treats. They sneeze into his sleeve. They roll in mud the moment the fancy parade ends. The boy finds this grounding, a gentle reminder that no matter how royal their rider, every horse still needs its hooves picked and its stall cleaned. There's a kind of theater to it all. The nobles on horseback look powerful, effortless, almost divine, but he knows how much labor that illusion demands. How many hands must work in silence and shadow and to keep the performance from slipping. And so when he watches a marquis ride by on a gleaming stallion, posture perfect and gaze fixed forward, he sees two things: the grandeur, yes, the elegance, but also the hours of brushing, the careful feeding, the mending of a frayed girth under moonlight. The stable boy is never acknowledged in these moments. His name is not called, but he doesn't need it to be. He sees the story beneath the surface, and in some quiet way he knows it belongs to him. Because in a world where power is painted on every surface, he is the one who lays the base coat, softly, silently, with care. What the stable teaches that the palace cannot. No one gives the stable boy lessons. He does not sit in a hall with tutors or learn from books adorned with royal crests. His education comes from hay and hooves, from quiet watching and repeated motion. And over time it becomes clear that the stable teaches things the palace cannot. He learns patience first. Not the waiting for dessert kind, but the slow, breath-by-breath patience that comes when coaxing a frightened horse or untangling a bridle in low light. He learns that rushing only leads to mistakes, and mistakes can bruise or worse. He learns how to read without words. The flick of an ear, the shift of weight, the difference between a tired sigh and a warning snort. The horses speak constantly, not in language but in rhythm, and in learning to hear them, he sharpens something inside himself that words might dull. He learns humility, not the kind preached in sermons, but the daily kind, the kind that comes when you shovel the same stall for the 7th time, or when your work is undone by a single gust of wind. He knows he is not the center of anything, and yet he is part of everything. The stable teaches consistency, too, that doing a job well once isn't enough. It must be done again and again without fanfare. That care is shown not in grand gestures, but in the daily combing of manes, the quiet retightening of buckles, the unseen straightening of tools before dawn. He learns how to see, not just look, but truly see. The split in a hoof before it becomes a limp, the slight warp in a wooden rail that signals coming rot. He notices things others miss because his world depends on those details. He also learns about people. Without asking, he comes to understand who gives orders with cruelty and who gives them with purpose. He sees which nobles speak kindly to their mounts and which treat them like furniture. These small differences tell him more about character than speeches ever could. And perhaps most of all, he learns resilience. He discovers that he can work while tired, that he can lift more than he thought, that he can endure cold, damp boredom and repetition without complaint, not because he is numb, but because he has chosen to care anyway. These lessons won't earn him a title. They won't win him a seat at any banquet, but they shape him quietly, layer by layer, like the smoothing of wood beneath sandpaper. In the palace, knowledge is written in books, taught through lectures, passed down in lineage. But in the stable it is learned through calluses and silence, through watching and doing again and again. And long after the nobles have forgotten his face, he will carry this education with him, in the steadiness of his hand, in the depth of his attention, in the unspoken pride of work well done. Because while he may sleep in straw, his wisdom is hard-earned, and in its quiet way it is noble too. And so the day ends, not with fanfare, not with music, but with the slow settling of dust, the rustle of straw, the quiet exhale of a stable grown still. The stable boy does not dream of becoming a nobleman. He does not yearn for velvet coats or gold-plated cups. His world is one of leather straps and lopsided buckets, of horses that trust him more than the people who ride them. And in that trust there is something sacred. He will rise tomorrow and do it all again, in rain or sun, in winter's breath or summer's glare. The same stalls, the same bristles, the same call to patience and strength. But it is not just repetition. It is devotion. It is rhythm. It is a life quietly lived and quietly honored. If you've stayed with him through this story, if your eyes now drift closed as the lanterns grow dim, then you too have felt the steady comfort of his world. Not exciting, not glorious, but good. Steady, real. Out beyond the marble halls of Versailles, beyond the powdered wigs and golden mirrors, lies this boy's small corner of France. Swept clean each morning, smelled of hay and smoke and the warm, earthy breath of horses. It is a life beneath history's spotlight, in the soft shadows just behind the curtain, and yet it matters. The nobility may ride high, but they are carried by animals who are cared for by hands like his. Invisible perhaps, but essential, quiet but constant, and through him, we remember that even the grandest kingdoms stand on ordinary shoulders. As you settle deeper now, blanket tucked, breath slowing, imagine the gentle creak of stable wood, the soft snuffle of horses settling in their stalls, the straw shifting beneath a tired boy's weight. No sounds of court, no horns, just the slow, sacred silence of rest. If this story helped you unwind tonight, I invite you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's strangely comforting to know who else is out there, drifting off to the same old history in quiet corners all around the world. Sleep well, friend, you're safe here. And tomorrow, like always, the world will wait patiently for you to rise.